4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, good evening and welcome. This is Manchester. You are in Manchester. Reform Radio and Shindigger and Velocity Press present the relaunch of Trip City. And I am very honoured and very happy, stop laughing, Trevor,
I can't
to be
help
sitting next to two total mavericks, two innovators and the Cheech and Chong of electronic music, Mr. Trevor Miller and
Yes.
A Guy Called Gerald.
Good evening.
Welcome. Welcome.
Hey.
Welcome. Welcome.
You know,
welcome everybody. Thank you for
And welcome and thank you to everybody for coming. We have a very
To this bonded warehouse.
small in real life audience here and socially distanced, but also a very massive online
but mentally
audience
connected.
streaming through the refund. Excuse me, I'm talking. I have the talking stick. You two will get your chance to talk in a bit. Anyway, yes.
Oh no.
Streaming live through the all-new Reform Radio website. So, yeah, it's all about the newness. It's all about the
Nowness.
all about the nowness. So let's dive in. Let's talk about 1989. Trip City was published for the first time. How did that come about?
Totally by chance, really. I ran into an old college teacher of mine, and they were launching a publishing company with Brian Aldiss, the sci-fi writer, and they were looking for, they wanted to do a book of short stories, and he said to me, did I have any ideas? And I said I have this idea for a novel, and I used to watch 70s sci-fi movies like Soylent Green with Charlton Heston, and I wanted to set something in nightclubs in the West End because there'd not really been a nightclub book that I'd read since the 60s, since Colin McInnes or any number of things. So literally, in this pub on Great Portland Street, I pitched him what became Trip City, and I really didn't believe they would buy into any of it. But he said to me, this sounds fantastic. What do you have? And I said, well, I don't really have anything, but what do you need? And he said to me, could you write up a couple of chapters in the next few weeks? So I borrowed a typewriter off a friend, and I went back to my squat, which was between the Angel and King's Cross. This is 1988. And I wrote the first two chapters. And bear in mind, there's no word processors then. There's no computers that people are writing things on. You're writing on a typewriter. So maybe I wrote up, I don't know, 25, 30 pages. And I put it in an envelope. And I took it to his office, which was on, for those of you who know Central London, was on Riding House Street, which is between Great Portland Street and Great Titchfield Street, right near Oxford Circus. And I dropped off these pages, and I honestly didn't think anything of it. And, I presumed he would look at it, and Brian Aldiss would look at it. To put Brian Aldiss in context, at this time in like 1988, Brian Aldiss is like the English version of like the dude who wrote Blade Runner or any number of those.
Yeah.
Isaac Asimov or one of those type of guys, massive, and Kurt Vonnegut, whoever, someone like that. And I honestly didn't think they would think it was that good.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
As you were typing on this typewriter, because you said there was no word processing, there was no... Were you duplicating it with a piece of carbon paper?
No.
Did you duplicate it?
No, there was no copies of it.
There was no copy.
There was no copies of it because I suppose I didn't have carbon paper. I only had whatever paper
What were you typing on? Were you actually typing on real paper? Or
it was like whatever Xerox paper I'd robbed from someone who lived in another squat down the hallway.
Was it your paper, Gerald? No.
But
I just remembered carbon paper. That was really cool because you could actually type like about 20 things at once if you just put a strip in between.
Yeah, exactly.
there was no copies, there was nothing. And I suppose, if I'm honest, I just thought to myself, they're probably not going to do anything, but it was worth a shot.
Had you typed anything before? Had you
course,
written any
'cause
stories before?
you know, I had a college degree, so you had to turn in a thesis for a college degree and whatever, also typed. So yeah, of course I typed things, but it wasn't even. I'd never written fiction of this kind before.
Right.
And when I look at it now, if I'm honest, now I'm sort of in the film and TV business. It reads like a screenplay still 30 odd years later, because all the punctuation and the staccato thing I came up with is how you write a screenplay.
Yeah.
You know, because a screenplay is basically a distilled text that isn't really about florid sentences, but is about brevity.
It's speech.
Yeah, and that's what they liked. And anyway, the short version is, I phoned them about 10 days later. I phoned Frank and I said, did you and Brian read it? What do you think? And he said, we thought it was really good, and we're going to give you a publishing deal, and we're going to give you an advance of £300. Which
that's a lot of money in 1989, though.
This is 1988 still.
1988, that's a lot of money.
So I bought myself, I remember vividly, I bought myself Avius sneakers that laced up the side and a tracksuit.
Priorities.
And I also bought a carton of cigarettes.
Priorities.
And I went to my mum's and I sat in the box room and I typed 80,000 words in 6 weeks.
Now, when you type these 80,000 words in 6 weeks, at which point did you think, I can hear music in this? And at which point did you bring this man in to the
what
mix?
happened was, I'd written the book and Frank had transcribed it onto a Macintosh 512. And he had gone in a store and he'd seen a libretto of opera, a book published with cassette tapes.
Right.
And I'd been somewhere in the West End and I'd seen they'd just released a book called The Mambo Kings Play Songs of Love by Oscar Huelos. I hope I said that right. And it came with a flexi disc. And he said to me, he said, the problem you have here is a lot of regular people are not going to know how this world you described feels beyond the way it's written. And really they need to know how it sounds, because so much of West End disco culture was about the sound. And I don't remember who mentioned Gerald's name first. I think it may have been one of the marketing people they'd hired, who was a lady called Rose Christie, who was the nightclub editor of Time Out at the time in London. And his name was mentioned, and then there was this idea that they could make a soundtrack for a book. And in 88, 89, that seemed... everyone had this weird concept of multimedia. I don't know if you remember, like CD-ROMs and these things, or it was even before that. It was just the early days of Apple computing. And so somebody knew somebody, and somebody contacted Gerald, and that was it. And then, I think he got a bigger advance than me. He got 500 quid. And I got 300.
Yeah, studios cost a lot more money to hire, though. You're sitting in the box room and he's...
But I remember the next thing, and as I said to you earlier, the next thing was we were at Moonraker Studios owned by Mike Harding, who I can't even think of a contemporary version of him because there probably isn't one. But just the idea that we were there and they had all these pictures of people like you see on the wall of the dry cleaners, like sort of weird minor celebrity like Jasper Carrot, just all sorts of other
that's right,
people who did like novelty records like Fred Wedlock or do you remember Fred Wedlock?
I remember Jasper Carrot.
Struggling here with the Wedlock.
Fred Wedlock is I think he did. His hit was like the oldest swinger in town.
Oh yeah. Oh, I shouldn't even be able to remember that. Oh no,
But-
I've no idea what you're talking
But there
about.
was me and
I know what he means when he says that.
Yeah.
there
I
was
do
me
that.
and him, and I
Wasn't
went
it?
to meet him. I got 2 buses from my dad's house, which is in Chorlton, and to Moonraker Studios. And what was amazing was that because I didn't really know, Voodoo Ray was a huge hit. It was so big at the time you couldn't walk in any clothing store in the West End or anywhere in the country without hearing it. It would be like, Gary Newman.
Cars.
Yeah, it was or
Or
one
a
of those.
Friends Electric.
Yeah, and it was because there was
Tubeway Army.
Yeah.
there was no other electronic music like it. You'd hear it everywhere. So the idea that I was in a studio with Gerald was like kind of mind-boggling. And what was even stranger was when he come with like 2 holdalls, like 2 sports bags, and he proceeded to unload all this analog outboard gear. Because bear in mind, again, there's no word processor, but also there's no sequencer, there's no
Yeah.
Ableton, there's no Cubase.
Analog.
Yeah. And he proceeds to plug together all this kit.
Right,
And
so can I just say these two haven't met since...
No, we've met, but we haven't been together in
haven't
Manchester.
been together in Manchester since they were in Moonraker Studios.
That's true, isn't it?
Back
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
day.
It's a long
So
time
this
ago
is
now.
again another first.
It's a reunion in an area that we've not been in for so long. I've been here a few times, but
No,
Trev's
I've not been here since
in
my
California.
dad died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're unwrapping your studio life, your analog
It's
studio.
like, I mean, I'm kind of going off the word analog now. It was basically like my digital 80s studio, because
Yeah.
it was like digital sounds,
yeah.
but like now they try and make it all romantic. But anyway, so basically I had an SH101, actually no, 2 SH101s, a TB303 and
You had the
TR808. Yeah, exactly. I mean, but these things are they were cheap and cheap rubbish things that you get from like Johnny Roadhouse, because everybody was trying to get rid of them. And
Johnny
you did, didn't you?
Roadhouse.
You picked him up.
it was like, a pile of like electronic things that I could figure out how to wire together, and they had like this strange 5-pin like connector on the back, which I seen on the back of my mom's Amstrad. So I thought, well, if you can connect these things together, maybe the sound from this one will go into this one. There was no manuals, there was nothing, no Google, so no internet. You basically had to just, plug everything in, and you could plug one thing out into the next thing. So you only had one like mixer's point somewhere. So everything was all connected, and then all of a sudden, like I realized you could also sync everything up too. So basically, the whole mix down or the whole writing operation would happen in the machines, like either live or certain things you could like sequence over time. And somehow I managed to get a groove going on with it, and then it became my thing.
Because the thing is, when people listen to the music now in 2021, they're coming to it with the head of having loads of memory, computers having loads of memory,
It's not
being
even-
able to
it's-
put...
Yeah, it's not even just that, but they've got loads of significance from other things. There's layers and layers of DJs who have sampled samples of samples of samples of samples or whatever. Like there was nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, like there was some tunes that I heard from Detroit, which I taped off the radio station, and like some stuff from like Chicago too, which I'd taped. So I'd basically had to kind of go from that memory. But like I was more into like in them days into like electro funk.
Yeah.
From New York, like Planet Rock and
Arthur Baker.
Yeah,
Arthur Baker.
So they were the influences I had. It was only influences, no samples, nothing, just influences. So basically, it actually helped in a way because I didn't have like the baggage that they have now. Like a lot of the DJ stroke producers, like now they have like this full on baggage.
Yeah, you've got a whole library of references.
Yeah, and like I actually bypassed that in a way. Well, I have now. Like I mean, and I kind of look at the damage that has been caused, and like I actually tried at one point to go into a few kind of schools and teach like the purity of what the actual sequencing, the digital stuff is all about, and you know where the sample thing kind of goes wrong sometimes. But anyway, that's another story. But like basically, when I'd kind of been given like the opportunity to work with Trevor, I was like, wow, like multimedia, interactive kind of, you know, like working.
It was amazing back then, wasn't it?
It's never been done before.
Yeah,
it had never been done before. It was
like, you know, when they explained it to me, you know, like, you know, you're going to be putting a cassette together for like a book. And I was like, you know, wow. So that means like you'd be able to read the book and listen to the music and like, you know, you can go, and I was like, wow, multimedia, you know, we're heading towards the future.
and definitely heading towards the future, because when you think about what it takes to compose a score, say for a film or a TV program or anything like that, everything is based on like the visual clues or the oral, audible cues that are there from what you see on the screen. Doing it for a book removes that because there are no visual there's no general visual clue for anyone.
Unless you're slightly synesthetic.
Well, no, because everyone that reads a book reads it differently. My idea of Harry Potter will be different to your idea of, you know, you know, my...
For sure,
everybody's idea is different. And, you know, similarly, Trevor's idea of what he could hear while he's writing it is different to your idea.
A green glowing like compound like totally sounds and looks and tastes and what feels different to Trevor than to me. You know? So
how do you hear a soundtrack for a book, and how do you create a soundtrack for a book?
Well,
what do both of you? I'm asking you the same question.
I don't think it matters what my version of it is, because my version of it is much the way as an interpretive dancer makes moves from music. Somebody making music for a text, it's not about what the text is, it's how someone interprets it. So what's important is not what the text is, but that it's Gerald Simpson interpreting it. So for me, you know, if you ask me what do I think it should have sounded like, I think what he did is made it sound, he took what I had and put his version of it together, which elevated what I had. And so, more importantly now, if I'm really honest, and you've mentioned, you know, this idea of what people listen to now, the music sounds as if it was made yesterday, not 30 years ago. And that's because he was at a bleeding edge of something that if it didn't make sense 30 years ago, it makes sense now. Because it doesn't matter, you know, posterity and history decides what is classic, not what it seems like at the time.
But like also like my interpretation kind of also, I was almost like schooled by certain types or genres, you might say, of music to the electronic thing as it was then. I actually got dragged down the rabbit hole of electronic experimental jazz rock music by
and Gregorian chants
by Chick Corean Return to Forever in the kind of earlier 80s kind of thing.
You mere Diodato.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I basically there's a few albums that he did that were concept albums, and I was just collecting all this stuff. Like me and my brother was like collecting all this
Who's in the audience right now?
we was collecting all this Chick Corea stuff, like, you know, from not from the record shops, from a library.
Yeah.
You know, we weren't even old enough to go to the library legally.
Yeah, there's a question. How old were you when you wrote this? When you created this soundtrack?
Well, when I created the soundtrack, I think I was probably 20 or something like that. But pre that, like in my early teens, like discovering like there's an album by Chick Corea called like Mad Hatter.
Yeah.
And like everyone kind of knows the story of the Mad Hatter and the Tea Party and but like when you actually listen to that album, there's titles like there's one title called The Woods, and it's all made with like analog like synthesizers, and like you can actually hear like the dampness of like the woods and the creepiness and stuff, and the, you know, things crawling around, and this is all done with synthesizers. I think Kraftwerk did something similar, but like for me, he did it with more texture and more kind of, you know, and at the same time we would like dancers, you know, we did like classical dance and like contemporary dance and jazz. So we were like, you know, as teenagers, like heads open and experimenting with movement and sound. So that for me, that's actually where, like, when I was given like the rough thing from Trevor's book, I was like, wow, like, you know, this is like what a club should be like, kind of thing. Because that.
Because you've just totally said there, much of the book, I do recommend, you know, everybody goes and does their own reading of the book, but much of the book, as life, is really down to chance and experimenting and where that leads us. Now, Trevor, there is, I read somewhere that you'd written that there's a moment where all our problems and our mistakes make sense.
Yes. It sounds good, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
I'm not sure what it means.
What does it mean?
I mean, I suppose...
But is this the moment where all our problems...
Listen, I suppose what happens for blue-collar people in the UK at a certain time, for people like us, in a certain era, the amazing thing about nightclubs, it was where, you know, working class people could have their moment. They could become famous and important and influence pop culture. And I think that's changed and become different now. But in 1988, 1989, when certain kinds of drugs and certain kinds of music hit nightclubs, it was an incredible leveler of people and a time. And you would see like West End hipsters with football hooligans in the same venue, dropping the same pills and grooving the same tunes. And we were talking earlier about how back then tunes were lyrical, you know, Promised Land, Reaching, all these songs. Yeah. They weren't just, it wasn't just, you know, it wasn't Mr. C just had banging tunes with no content. Yeah. There was content and
there was meaning as well.
Yeah, and
they derived, they actually, that stuff came from, it wasn't from sample based material, it was
songs.
Like, it was mimicking, like, it was electronic music mimicking soul music.
Yeah.
You know, so like that's
Turntable Orchestra. You're gonna miss me when I'm gone.
Yeah, like, you know, Dream Girls by like DJ Pierre, Fantasy Club. You know, I mean, all these, like these whole. I mean, I could play like 80s acid for like, you know, like 3 days straight, and like, you know, probably people might know like Promised Land, or, you know, there's like probably 2 or 3 tunes that I mean,
yeah.
But there was so many. You know, like that's what inspired me actually
to
move towards like house music. You know, because it was just so clean and so fresh.
It was modern soul music.
Yeah, it was. I mean, like I was still involved, and I still liked like the electro funk at the time. But like this actually was more involved in like the machinery. You know, and I could see like you know, I remember the point when like electro funk and techno and house kind of separated, and like electro funk then started to become more DJ orientated, then loop sampled, and like more about they put the emphasis on the lyrics and not actually any of the production. Well, some of the production, but it was mostly on the lyrics. And whereas techno and electro funk became more kind of instrument orientated.
Yes.
But like at the same time, they lost the kind of the vocabulary, you know.
Yeah,
of,
because
lyrics
I think what you're talking about is what happened.
Around about 1986, 87, like by 88, it was all over because like basically the sampler was invented. DJs thought that they were producers.
But what you're talking about is like the difference between when Motown crosses over and becomes disco.
Yeah.
And when soul music and dance music change over from being about lyrical content and telling stories to being about what are like floor fillers where the lyrics are repetitive and hypnotic and not really telling the same kind of involved story, but a story that is just the idea of, you know, much more simplistic.
Yeah.
So can I wind it back to this story then?
Okay.
And it's very much a club experience, as you can tell. Both of these are totally vibing on the music, but the main character, Valentine, it's his story, really.
Yes, and I wanted
Is
to.
Valentine you?
No, Valentine
Is any of Valentine?
No,
you?
Valentine is Eddie Murphy in Trading Places.
Okay.
But
How's
which
that?
is because it's about the idea that someone gets given the keys to the kingdom and has to make a deal with the devil.
Right.
Which is Dante's Inferno, which is classic literature in Europe and England and America.
Greek tragedy.
Yes, which is the fact that somebody returns to. It's funny because, and we were talking about Lee Scratch Perry earlier. It's the return of Django. It's about somebody, a bad man who comes back to town to try and settle old scores and gets pulled into something that some of it's me. Some of the things I did, some of the regrettable and awful and drug-riddled and but that was my life. I mean, the thing was,
Look at it in a different light now.
Read the book.
I just it's like what George Best said. You know, I spent most of my money on drugs and women and alcohol, and I squandered the rest. And that was my feeling of the way. I became friends with guys I'd seen in the Face magazine.
Yeah.
They became my friends, and suddenly I was in this, and I was younger than those guys a little bit, and I was in this legendary thing, and my friends were the drug dealers and the ne'er-do-wells and the gangsters, and I loved the idea. There was an electricity hanging about with these dangerous men, and I did, and then I got sucked into all sorts of just really rotten things, which
I bumped into him in the Chelsea Hotel in New York.
Yeah.
And I was like,
yes, the Chelsea Hotel
Yeah,
in New
the
York.
notorious Chelsea
I
Hotel.
was like, how the hell did you get here? And then I seen the rest of him. Like there was a whole. I think it was called a brain bunch or something like that.
Including Simon Lovejoy, who's in the audience. And but so it is my story, but it's a work of fiction, and it's also a story that is really like I say, I was unaware that anyone had written a Dante's Inferno of nightclubs, and what was ironic is many years later, various other people, Irvine Welsh, who have, a long list of them, a litany of people wrote stuff that they became famous off this very culture that didn't make me that famous or that successful.
Yeah, but it always takes somebody to set the tone, doesn't it?
You have
There
to break
always has to be somebody
You've got to
that
break the seal.
play
there
to 'em.
first. You have to
Yeah.
break the seal. You
Fair
have
play
to.
to them, but I also think that
You have to be happy with that and all. Like, you know, it's
Yeah.
like, okay, I broke the seal.
The person who does it first isn't necessarily the one that's going to be famous or rich from it. They're just
Yeah,
going
but I
to be the one
didn't
that does it first.
I didn't
Have to do that.
I didn't
Like,
care about any of that. I still don't care about any of that. The only thing that was important to me is that, and it remains the same now, is that it's deeply flawed on many, many levels, but at the same time, it's incredibly authentic, and it's not a thing that, at the time, a lot of other people who wrote for all the style magazines, I was vilified by a bunch of them because they didn't have a book about this thing, even though they
Right.
had been around it. And they were like, oh, yeah, that's all nonsense. And, you know, the drugs aren't dark enough. But, again, for me, the drugs were supposed to be like Soylent Green with Charlton Heston, not, you know, or electric Kool-Aid acid test or any of those things. It wasn't meant to be Colin McInnes. So, yeah.
So my question to you both is, you both come from Manchester.
Yes.
Yeah. And yet the book was set in London.
Yeah.
The music's to evoke these nightclubs in London, but how much of that experience came from clubbing in Manchester and your appreciation and your just being actual Manx writing about a London experience or a London vibe?
All my music experience came from Manchester, because like up until then, I mean, I've never really been out of Manchester. Like, I think 1989, I went to New York for the first time.
Yeah.
But I've been going down to London, but London was about rare groove.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
it was like a rare groove place. Like, my sister used to live down there, so I would go down there with a whole load of tape cassettes and tape the pirate radio stations, like all the rare groove stuff from there. But like, I never really seen it as a place for like kind of like the acid house thing. I heard that first in Manchester, but then like later on, I kind of seen that it was kicking off down there. I think Dingwalls and places like that.
And how
Recently.
much of your experience in the book, Trevor, was down to your DJing and
Well,
MCing?
I mean, I used to go to the Hacienda when I was, I don't even remember, like I was, you know, a child, and I think the first club I went to here when I was about 15 or 16 was Berlin, and
Yeah,
it was
so did
like it was on down the back of Kendall Mill, and
I think it was 55 King Street.
yes,
Was it?
and I remember I used to go there, and I used to get the bus from my mum's, and I used to wear a raincoat and have my disco attire under my raincoat, and I fancied I looked like Lou Reed on the back of Transformer.
Yeah,
When
we
in
all
fact,
did.
somebody else said I looked like Roy Kinnear.
That's
and
cruel, savage.
you know, but what was funny was that I used to ride that bus, and in front of me, he was the pot man in the club, was Ian Brown, when he had
Wow.
a flat top. And the guy who was the DJ there was this posh bloke who was studying.
Were you there on a Saturday?
It was a Saturday.
It was Alan Maskell and Dave Booth. I used to go.
And do you remember
I
there
used
was
to
the
go.
posh bloke who was the transvestite bloke,
Yeah.
and they used to play the Cramps, the Hammerlock,
Yeah.
or the Crusher, one of my personal favorites. And I used to, my father found jewelry in my pocket of a coat, and he was convinced I was a transvestite and horrified because he found eyeliner and jewelry in a coat pocket. but yeah, no. So I suppose,
Must have been crazy times.
They were.
yeah. No, I suppose if I'm honest,
We're talking about the 80s, remember?
Yeah,
80s,
no, this
90s,
was
so-
like, this would have been like, if I was 15, this is like 1981,
Yeah.
something like
That's
that.
when that's
And I just remember thinking that if I could, I would escape to that world forever, because that world was magical, and all the things that I hated didn't exist in that world.
and so you created the book.
I I wish it was that logical. I'm not sure it was, but I do think that what I found in nightclubs was that was my Harry Potter, but it was real, and that was for me somewhere where I could go. And I suppose there's like things that you see in like Sacha Baron Cohen things where he's like, in one of the films, I can't remember, the Ali G film, where he's like a gothic in like a mohair sweater with dyed jet black hair and dancing to, something that sounds like Ricky Gervais's record. And
Southern Death Cult.
yeah, I remember seeing Southern Death Cult at Rafters. Do you remember that?
Of course I do.
And I remember seeing Blue Rondo with
Ali Turk, yeah.
yes, at the Ritz Ballroom. I remember thinking, I wish I knew those guys. And when I went to London, they became my
You
friends.
met Max. Yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, look, I mean, the truth of it is, back then, for a working class person, this was they were people in the arts that you aspired to be around, because these were also blue collar people. These were working class people who were genuinely in the arts, making music and stuff, and there was a sense of style and all sorts of shit. So yeah, of course it started at Berlin on Bridge Street, but that never went away, because even now, as a man in my mid to late 50s, when I think about those times, I carry them around with me, because when I feel kind of a bit low, I remember that it's okay, because I was that guy and I crossed over to something else, and I think maybe anything is possible, because when I remember being in my bedroom and looking out across that backyard and imagining being in another country, in another world, where all the problems of my childhood would evaporate, and I did that. And that's why I wanted to be in California and in the film industry, because I wanted to be part of that fantasy and it to be real for me, because the horrific parts of my childhood, I mean, I can say this stuff, my parents are dead, my brother's dead. It was fucking horrific. It was.
Yeah.
I was in the worst parts of a Mike Leigh film, and I didn't know how to get out of it except to dream of another world and imagine a place that was literally over the fucking rainbow.
So can we talk about drugs and what that had? Well, first of all, there's a lot of drugs in the book, but they're fantasy drugs.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's a fantasy experience. So how did you, first of all, conceptualize this? How did you term it now? I have to look at my notes, because you called FX the treat of treats, is it?
There's various different terminology of it within the book, but the idea of it was very, very simple, which was that I'd read about things like DMT. I don't know whether you're familiar with that. DMT is, there's various things that...
It's like a chemical version of ayahuasca in a way.
Yes,
Okay.
that's right.
Okay.
There's an ayahuasca and all these things that go back to tribal cultures, where people would go on these flights of fancies and become the medicine man in the village.
Right.
Become the tribal elder, the sage who would cross time and space in different universes. And I'd read various different things about that, and I just thought to myself, why can't I invent my own version of that? Why should it have to be some realistic thing? So I just thought, and at the time, in the early, after acid and various other kind of designer drugs in London, M25 and this, all sorts of shit people invented, who knows? And I just thought, wouldn't it be tremendous if there was my version of it? Because then nobody could say, oh, this is just acid. Oh, this is just, people doing speedballs. And I thought, I just invent my own thing. And what I wanted was the idea of like Carlos Castaneda or someone like that, where or Jodorowsky or those people who, there's a movie called The Holy Mountain. And it's about a man who, characters who travel through time and space and consciousness. And the idea, the irony is, 30-odd years later, I'm doing transcendental meditation at the Maharishi University in Fairfield, Iowa, and it's the same shit. And it's just about connecting with a thing called the unified creative field, which is the idea that all the creative things we come up with are linked on a universal level that transcends time and space. Jesus, Muhammad, everyone had a version of that. And any culture with a Messiah or...
It's actually called a die-hold.
Thank you.
Okay. From who?
It's Douglas Voigt, Reality Revealed. Like we're all dimensions are projected from. Like
Okay.
he actually made up basically it's a theory, but it's called the first chapter of the book is called the video videotape theory, and basically he basically says you could have a bit of strip of like videotape, you can't see anything, but it's full of information. But if you've got the right reader and it's playing at the right time, you'll get the information that's available. And like within like our basically sphere of what we can see within light and what we hear is basically it's a system that he called the die-hold, where things like could basically at this speed, like we see certain things in this within 3 dimensions, and then like at a different speed or a different frequency, it will be 4 dimensions and so on.
Well, the Maharishi says there is 7 dimensions. And the Maharishi says that the unified creative field, it's a bit like the Force in Star Wars.
Right.
It links everything. And if everyone could tap into it, there would be no wars and no pain, because people would realize they were more connected than they were different.
So is this what the FX drug was based on?
Listen, I mean, Paulette, I wish I could say something that clever, but this is 30-odd years ago. So I suppose the truth of it is, it's a young man or a young boy's version of the fact that maybe it could be like a sci-fi movie if you took the right drug, and in a good way, because what happens is, despite the fact the book seems somewhat dark to a lot of people, it's about somebody, in one sense, connecting with a universal reality, as opposed to the idea that the whole world is a branding exercise, which in 1989 seemed a ludicrous concept.
Yeah.
But now, isn't the whole world a branding exercise?
Yes, it is, most certainly. And Gerald, how then, musically, I know you've been quoted as saying that the writing process for you is like creating musical paintings to evoke atmosphere and illustrate its visions. So how did you then get into writing? I mean, there's 5 tracks.
Yeah.
Trip City, Valentine's Theme, At the Mambo, then there's FX, and then Soho Chances. Yeah. So how did you get into writing 5 tracks, which are house, techno?
Okay, so I'll kind of try and start in reverse. I can't remember exactly which was which, but like the chances was like, it was like to take a chance. So I'd basically tried this thing of like trying to make a rhythm which was kind of like an offbeat kind of thing, And the chance was like at the same time I was doing demos for Warner Brothers and Sony.
Yeah.
So I put like Sony Music and Warner Brothers are a load of wankers and reversed it.
I bet you didn't know that.
I bet they didn't know
But
that.
they didn't know that.
That was the chance. So then when we sent the music off to them, they were being called wankers and they didn't hear it in the demo. That was the chance. And so then after that,
Is that typical
I
Gerald?
did effects. And like basically for me, like I'd basically tuned into it on the level of like the bass line.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like I wanted to
Fight the power.
Yeah, I wanted
Well,
to
I was going to say, because then we get to FX,
Yeah.
and you've got this vocal, I've got the power,
basically
and a really skittering digi beat.
yeah, and it
underneath
was
it.
basically supposed to be like a kind of edgy kind of drug that basically would like lift you up and give you like this kind of
Power.
It
Yeah.
was like you'd want to kind of like if you was like riding on like a motorbike and it's like you knew that wasn't actually you that was creating that speed, it was something else, but you was like you was basically in there in it.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to create that kind of vibe, so I had this kind of motory kind of, it was like this bass, and like the whole thing was supposed to be like this there's this green thing that was glowing. So like for me at the time, I used I think it was Juno 106 to create like this really kind of chorusy
Raw.
kind of to give you like this spread of like artificial but like really it's hard to explain it really, but like it was like I wanted something that was like kind of sticky sound, like really, and like so it was glowing green sticky kind of thing, and that basically, and the drums obviously was part of like the kind of push.
I guess right now I'm being super, super mean by not playing the music live.
Not at all, not at all. I'm sure my
But also
explanation is
being
making it
super
clear.
mean because you can't find any of this music really online. There's only one place where you can find this online, which is YouTube. You can't get it on. Can you get it on Spotify? I don't
Not at
think
all.
so.
Like,
Nothing
like,
of yours
basically,
on
like,
Spotify.
By the end of like any time, like my stuff is going to be eradicated from Spotify.
Right.
Basically because like it's kind of slightly changing the subject. I want to create a world where the audience or the people can connect directly with the artist.
Yeah.
And then you'll get the truth about like what is going on with artists from the actual artist, and also you will basically be able to, the artist will feel rewarded and inspired, because like there's a really big wall in between artists and the people that they're actually listening, who are listening to their music.
So this
and there's all these experts who kind of know better than the artist, who are basically selling the artist. Yes, they're the yay and nay, and the artist is basically behind this wall, kind of, and they're supposed to. They're like, okay, you just get on with doing the music, and
So this explains then why there's only vinyl available.
Yeah, there is only there will be only vinyl available for the
There's
foreseeable
no
future.
digital. You cannot buy
I'm
this
sorry about
soundtrack
that, but like
on
it's
digital.
But
So
I think that's tremendous that it's only available as a record, because the irony is it was only a hardback book and a cassette.
yeah, exactly.
So for the 21st century, Colin Stephen had the presence of mind to do an accessible version of it, in the sense that everyone's got a record player now.
yeah,
Even though everyone thinks no one got a record player, everyone got a record player. Because you can buy it for like $49.99 encased in leather with a handle on it, like the old Dan set from whatever. That's
amazing.
It's a thing that everyone has. So, and also the other thing for me that is incredible is how good the packaging and the presentation he did, because he's made it feel both exactly how it was. But 21st century.
yeah.
So that was just a real thrill. I don't know. I do different things now. I don't do this anymore. So to that it exists again, and me and him are here talking about it is
It's beautiful.
Well, it's just an incredible piece of good fortune, because so many things that I remember from this era just vanished and became meaningless, because there isn't many people like Colin Stephen of Velocity Press who have the good sense and presence of mind to repackage heritage things and make them feel relevant for now, because that's hard to do.
Well, that's one thing that I was going to ask you. Does the soundscape and the landscape of Trip City still hold solid in 2021? And what, if there's anything in the book at all, and if there's anything in your soundtrack that you would change, would you change anything? Or
I'll tell you something really funny, and Colin's going to get a little bit peeved when I say this, but it's a true thing, and it's really quite interesting, is there was no digital files left of the book when Colin decided to republish it, and he asked me for a Word file of the text. So what happened is I sent it to an Indian man that I met off Fiverr for like $200 to take a PDF and turn it into a Word file. And some changes were made, including, most obviously to me, the character who was called Al, spelled A-L, was transferred to the character A1. Because the L and the 1 were transposed. And there was a couple of other minor things like that. But it just felt like someone had reinterpreted it and made it new again. It's irrelevant, sort of, but also it's important, because what happened, and I believe the same happened with the soundtrack when it was cut as a piece of vinyl and packaged in that nice sleeve with the nice inner sleeve with the story on it. Because when it was originally released, there was no story that anyone could tell as to how the soundtrack was made. Right. Certainly not my experience of going to Moonraker Studios with Gerald. So what's happened is new light has been shed on the story. The story has been changed incrementally, and it's become another thing and a new kind of artifact. Right. So I just think, and I haven't played the vinyl, but I know, and I'm guessing, that when you played the whatever they call the demo disc of it, it probably sounded better than the cassette, right?
It does, obviously, it does.
So it's 21st century. So all of a sudden, it's brand new.
So it's living and breathing.
Listen, look, Paulette, you know what? I'm 56 years old in October. I've now done this for 30 odd years, and I got a master's degree last year.
Congratulations.
And when I did, I said to myself I wanted to get back to the beginning. And towards the end of that year, Simon Morrison, who's in the audience, put me on a panel, and Carl Loban, who was on the panel, introduced me to Colin. And they said, wouldn't it be great if someone re-released your book? And I was like, I don't know whether anyone's interested. But when I started my master's degree, and they interviewed me, the panel, to do the degree, they asked me what did I want, and I said, if I had my druthers, if I had the ruby red slippers and I could click my heels together, I wished I could go back to the beginning and find again why I used to do this. Because 30 years on in a writing career where maybe it didn't turn out as good as you wanted it to, and you've written loads of schlocky old nonsense, action B movies and all sorts of crapola, and you think to yourself, well, when I started, my life wasn't meant to turn out like that.
Yeah.
And so I said to them, I wish I could get back to the beginning, and here we are, back to the beginning, reinvented, reinvigorated, energized and relevant, And then within that, an understanding that stylistically I've gone back to that when I write screenplays, just the brevity and the idea that we can condense stories into very simplistic words and terminology, and hand to God or whatever you believe in. This is all a tremendous gift, and I can't believe it. And the only tragedy is that my parents and my brother are dead, and they never got to see it.
Yeah.
Because that would have been for them like a magic moment, and it still is for me. And it's been very, very weird being here, because last time I was here, they were still all alive, really. Now they're all dead. And but the story lives on. And the great thing is, just riding on the train with this guy, I remember that magic in that studio, because he hasn't changed. He's actually got better, and he's not got more cynical.
That's a good thing to hear.
He's got wiser.
Wiser, definitely.
And also the other thing is, when I see him with an iPad and he's conjuring music from just a bunch of old and new stuff, I think the technology may have changed, but he has just transcended.
Absolutely.
And that's a thrill to be around.
Yeah.
And when he plays tunes, as he did at the party we did in London,
as he is going to do later on,
it's absolutely electric. And to be part of that is a huge thrill. So I thank him for that.
Thanks.
Answer the same question. So for you, is there anything that you would change, or how has the feeling been for you?
No, because I mean, for me, really, it's like, especially with music, it's like a diary. So like, I can't change what has happened in the past. I mean, I can relive it and like kind of maybe kind of point to certain things. Like if someone knows the stuff from the past, then I can kind of nod to that with something new. But like, I can't really change, obviously, what was in the past. And I actually like to kind of make some kind of bridgeway or connection to like newer things, and then but yeah, I don't think I would change anything. And the actual story itself, kind of, for me, it's like I actually had not really been like living or hung out in London at the time when I first got like the manuscript and all that, and then later on when I actually went down to London, like a lot of it rang true. A lot of the places now don't exist. Yeah. And it was like, wow, like there's this place, and like that place that you would go to, and like you like the way that King's Cross is, and that it was totally different to like now. You know what I mean? And there's like loads of little bits in it. I mean, you see, it's like when you watch a film about like that's in New York, and you actually you've been on them streets, and it's like, oh wow.
This was our New York, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. We'd go down to London, and it would be like, wow, So I was kind of seeing like a Mancunian's like eye view of London. Yeah. Through Trevor.
His eyes. Yeah, so was there a moment then, or at all, when you were mastering the vinyl and you were listening to the mastering of the vinyl, did you think, oh, I could clean it up a bit, between the cassette and the vinyl? Was there ever that temptation to just tweak it a bit, make it a bit louder, make it,
I've fallen into that trap in the past with things where I've gone back and revisited things, because I've basically been remastering like my entire like back catalogue that no one's ever heard before, or probably never will hear. And basically I kind of started to at first like use all the new plugins to kind of clean and then up. I realized that I'd spent like years and years like kind of hours and years and months on different tracks, and like each one is individual as it is. Mm-hmm. And then like trying to kind of visit that and like wiping out some of the old stuff, I'd kind of erased like some of its memory, what I mean, and energy. So I find like the best thing is to try and like less is more. So certain things you can kind of reduce a little bit, but like if you try and like add, you know, it's like, okay, well, here's today, we're going to put more bass on, you know, you kind of drown like some of what has been. So, you know, I leave all the new stuff for the new music now. And like, so that was like kind of like framed and like old then. So I think there was a few things that had to be done for like the vinyl. So we had to take away a few little bits and pieces so that like all 5 tracks could fit.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's about that. And then like it's basically just I mean, it should be pretty similar to the cassette.
I think it sounds better.
So you talk about then you've spoken briefly about the style of it being the writing style of it being very like a film script, but we haven't still seen a film. You know, it hasn't made.
Well, let's put it like this. I'll give you a great example. Queen's Gambit was a novel written by Walter Tevis, who is a unique writer because Walter Tevis wrote a book that became The Hustler with Paul Newman, a book that became The Color of Money with Paul Newman and Tom Cruise, a book that became The Man Who Fell to Earth with David Bowie, which they're currently remaking with an all-black cast, by the way, with Chiwetel as the David Bowie character. And his most recent work from the early 80s is Queen's Gambit. Mm-hmm. And at the time, everyone said, well, no one's going to make Queen's Gambit into a movie or a series because it's about chess. Mm-hmm. And it's about a woman, a young girl, and no one's going to be interested. Well, of course, Queen's Gambit is the most successful thing to hit Netflix in its history. So why hasn't Trip City been a movie or a TV series? I hope it would be a series because then me and him would make maybe some scratch. But I suppose just because the moment didn't happen and because nobody realized that it doesn't really need to be set in 1989.
Well, I kind of felt that it was more a TV program than a film.
If it could be a TV series, I'd love that.
I think that's the loop. It's episodic. It's
it really is. It's like if it could be like Queen's Gambit, or it could be like, I don't know, a couple of limited series that I really liked. And over the years, as it says on the irony is the remake of Candyman just came out the other weekend.
Yeah, massive, biggest selling
And
movie.
Bernard Rose, who did Candyman, the original movie with Tony Todd, he was going to make it into a movie at one point, as was Howard Kazanjian, who produced Raiders of the Lost Ark, as was numerous people, but I was going to do it myself. We did a casting with a bunch of people who ended up to be huge movie and TV stars in America, English people, and then the money fell through, and so I just think it's a question of time, and maybe if we get lucky this time round, maybe someone will realize that a story of a young man's descent into hell and a fictional designer drug and a world based around branding and the idea that corporate culture has infiltrated everything in everyday life, much the same that nightclub culture has now. You look at things, this is going to sound a ludicrous analogy, you look at Love Island. Love Island is basically Ibiza, like 30 years ago, where everyone worked out. All those things that we see on mainstream TV in the UK and America are influenced by nightclub culture in very, very subtle ways. So I think it's just a matter of time. I hope somebody sees this incarnation of it and, sees, and my agent seems to think that maybe something will happen, but I don't know. I hope it does, because then we can all go on a very nice holiday and get some new dental work done.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe it's a question. Maybe it's a question of casting then. So, who would you cast in Valentine's part?
Christ.
Anyone you like.
It's just it's
Black or white.
It's a
Male
really,
or female, actually. You
I
could,
would
you could
cast
swap it.
who's the mixed race guy from the
Bridgerton.
yes, what's that guy
Oh,
called?
what's his name?
Rene Jean Page or what? That dude. I'd cast him.
Right, so we've got that dude is Valentine. Then
I've not got a clue about.
we've not
I
got
don't
a
even
clue
have a
about
TV.
casting.
I don't have a television. I mean, seriously. I gave my television when I was living in America for a while, and I had a TV, and it gave me like angst, and I got rid of it.
So you would
I'll
you would
do the
keep it as
sound.
a book, and you'll just
No.
keep the sound.
I'll focus on the sound. You just tell me what you want, like audio wise,
Okay.
Yes.
and I'll
you'll
paint that for you, like
You'll
around.
score the TV program, but you won't watch it.
I'll paint around the characters. I'll play. I think it would be really abstract that way, and you'll get more of a kind of something that is like
an operetta.
The audio will be as entertaining as the visual. You know what I mean? You're not going
Visual won't be that
I'm not going to
entertaining,
pretend
but
it to
anyway.
be.
Maybe.
Was it?
I love the way they're talking over each other.
What was it called? Some island, Fantasy Island, or whatever. What was it? The
Fantasy
Fantasy
Island
Island.
went the rock with your plane.
The plan.
the one that you were just saying. The
Love Island.
Love Island. Yeah. Like.
There's a big difference between those two.
All right. Okay.
Yes.
So like basically like it would basically be. I would do like my kind of version of like the soundtrack, and like I could also do effects too, like,
Yes.
so like I would do that. Like you just give me the visuals. Like I've got no kind of connection to the characters or whatever, like emotionally or romantically or whatever. So I would just basically do like a really
Right, so
nice
basically
audio.
you're no help in the casting office then.
No, not at
No,
all.
it
No
doesn't
help.
have to be though,
I
because
just do the audio.
You'll just do the
Yeah,
audio.
yeah.
the truth of it
You
is,
do that bit then, and we'll do this bit.
I would never be in that conversation. What would happen is they'd say,
We've got...
we've got Zendaya, who we're going
She's
to...
definitely got to be in it because I love her.
They're going to say, listen, I've got a
She plays
terrific
the
idea.
lead.
Why don't we make Valentine a chick?
Yeah.
What
She
about if
does
we
it.
get Zendaya?
She'd be brilliant though. She'd be brilliant.
And we make it from a female perspective. And I'd say, well, the main character is supposed to be 35. And she's...
she can level up.
What we'll do with prosthetics, we'll increase the brow. We'll give her larger eyebrows. Maybe a fake jawline, which we can CGI in.
And then she could get younger during the
And
whole
then she
thing.
gets younger.
And
yeah,
that'd be
really
it goes
cool.
back to the thing.
would be
And
really
we'll
cool.
put
Of course.
Jeffrey Wright in as the businessman.
Yeah. Okay.
Welcome to America.
Okay. Welcome to America. Now, I've read your Trip City State of Mind that you wrote in March 2021. This was
Yes.
to update the...
Yes, very hard to write that
How come?
because I wanted to really be honest about why the book existed in the first place and where I ended up and things I'd learned and how hard things had been. And I've said this in a number of things of this kind that we've done, but it's very simple. You read things about people in the paper or online, and you realize how rotten their childhoods were and where they grew up must have been hard, and everything was totally broken. And it took me till I was about 45 years old, and I realized that was my life.
Yeah.
And luckily, on one level, everyone's dead, so I can tell the truth about them. But until they were, I couldn't. It would break their hearts for them to be exposed for
In that way.
certain kinds of things that they didn't try and hide it. But like so many people in the United Kingdom of a certain era, nobody wanted to say that your kids were mentally ill or your family life was broken or that it was tragic or you'd walked into a Mike Leigh movie art directed by Tim Burton.
Yeah. So then you've said being human is always our finest hour. So if
Yes.
being human is our finest hour, what can we as humans trying to do better in 2021? What can we
It's
take
very, very
away from
simple.
Valentine's journey? What can we take away from the
It's
book?
very, very simple. Just help people and be kind, and try and be decent in a United Kingdom where national insurance has gone up and benefits have been taken away from all sorts of people, and we live in a country run by absurd right-wing despots. Where I live, it was Donald Trump. Here, it's Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
I think if the people were just to say, I've had enough, and these people need to be thrown out, and decency and good sense and humanity needs to reign, then the world will be changed forever and be forever better, instead of some, excuse my French, some arsehole being on the telly saying, I've got a wonderful idea. All the poor are going to pay loads more money and the rich are going to have a great life. I just see these things and I feel like Terry Thomas or Dick Van Dyke is in charge of everything. And you ask me what could be better, throw those people out. Put decent people in charge. And if you can't find decent people, take charge yourself and be kinder and do better. And understand that the 21st century should be defined by kindness and good sense, not by stupidity and bigotry and racism.
And on that note, I think we're just about due to close. Gerald, what would your hope be if people listened, when people listen to the music that goes, the soundtrack that goes with the book, when people read the book, what would you like them to take away?
I would like them to basically have like a bed of audio that they can basically sit in and, or like lie in, or, you know, and actually be able to absorb the actual story and with an atmosphere, an audio atmosphere. I mean, I basically just focus on like the audio side of things. And like from what he was saying, I think people should have more compassion.
Yeah.
Full stop, you know, like.
Now, as, you know, in a world where not everybody likes to read a book, and playing devil's advocate, and this is an audio experience, will there be an audible version of
There will
Trip
be an
City
audio
available
book.
ever?
Yes.
Who's going to read it? Cast it. Yeah, anyway.
No, I tell you, I was trying to get a fellow Mancunian.
Cillian Murphy, he's really
No,
good. Cillian Murphy,
I was trying to get Benny Wong. I was trying to get him, but he didn't respond to my email. Because obviously he's in Chang-Chi or whatever it's called and made like $400 billion. But him or another Mancunian actor, Sam Hazeldine, who was in another thing of mine, who would be great. But it doesn't even matter, just somebody. Also David Thewlis, until I found he had a new book coming out. Or also another Thewlis-like figure from Doctor Who, the new Doctor Who from some years ago, Christopher Eccleston. He voiced a book about Man United, but he's another one who's like, he's already got his own thing going and wants more than £3.75 and 2 luncheon vouchers.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if there's any just brilliant
luncheon vouchers.
Up and coming luncheon vouchers.
2 luncheon vouchers, mate.
You
can have the tripe dinner.
If any absolutely brilliant Manchester actors who are really good at voiceovers want to do an audible version of Trip City, get in touch.
Yes, we'd be thrilled.
For 2 luncheon vouchers and a ham sandwich.
No, a meal deal.
A meal
from
deal.
Tesco, the £3 one, not the £5 one from Marks and Spencer's. I don't know whether we can spring for that, but the £3, and certainly not.
You're really
What about that
tempting people here with that deal.
The canned pie, what was that called? You know, you get a
Fray Bentos.
Fray Bentos.
Oh God, I love
Fray
Fray
Bentos.
Bentos.
You're killing me
Especially
here.
steak and kidney.
You are killing me here, the pair of you. So my final question before I hand over to Gerald, who's going to play an exclusive DJ set. Yeah. Thank you, Shindigger and everyone. Yeah.
Yes.
So stick around.
Yes, man.
My final question is, do the good guys win?
The good guys always win. Without that, we're
left with Boris Johnson, Donald Trump forever.
Yeah, so that's it. Thank
Good
you
guys have to win.
so much, Trevor Miller and A Guy Called Gerald.
Thank
Thank
you
you
very
so
much.
much,
Please
Paulette.
do
Thank you, Paulette.
head
Thank you,
over
Paulette.
to Velocity Press and pick up your copy
Thank you,
of
Colin.
the vinyl.
Thanks, Colin.
Trip City, the soundtrack by A Guy Called Gerald. Trip City, the book, which has just fallen over, by Trevor Miller. It's at velocitypress.co.uk. Yeah, I'm really bad at getting prompts there. You saw that, didn't you? It's terrible. Yeah, velocitypress.co.uk. Get the book, pick up the vinyl. And these two are two absolute dudes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reform Radio. Thank you, Velocity Press. And thank you, Shindiger Beer, for such a marvellous evening.
out the order, hey, and we a mash up, we own structure, bang, the limits at the mouth of the head, sunshine in your mind instead, when you loving on your heart, happiness get dead.
Oh, nene, simpozuka. Oh, nene, pozuka, bune. Oh, nene, oko. Oh, nene. Don't try to go back to that room. Don't try to go back, it's too soon. It's just a river running wild. 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 I'm glad we meet at last. I'm glad we meet at last.
deep, I get deep, I get deeper into this thing. The deeper I go, the more knowledge I know what to sing, what to bring. What? I get deep, I get deep, I get deep, I get deeper, deeper, deeper into the vibe. What? Chilling in the corner at the shelter all by myself, checking it out. I'm not dancing no more, but why? 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 What? How on earth are you supposed to vibe around the fake ones, the ones that say they know what is what, but they don't know what is what. They just strut. What the fuck? What? I get deep, I get deep, I get deep, I get deep, I get deeper into this thing, and I pretend that they're not there. I just stare up in the booth at the Dread Man spinning the song, spinning it strong, playing things like when can our house begin? That's my shit. What? Woo! I get deep, I get deep, I get deeper, I get deeper when people start to disappear, and it's about 6 o'clock. Woo! I'm feeling hot. Take off my sweater and my pants, and I start to dance, and all the sweat just goes down my face, and I pretend that there's nobody there but me in this place. I get deep, yo, I get deep. What? Woo! I get deep, I get deep, I get deep, I get deep when he takes all the bass out the song, and all you hear is highs, and it's like, oh, shit. I get deep. I get deep, I get deep. I get deep, I get deep. 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 I get
You better wake up to what's going down. Your eyes are closed, but your ears hear the sound that cries in the wind. The thought makes you cringe. He's dead and gone. You lost another friend who was young in age, but old and sane. Gang banging, banging, he was slanging the juice. The skunk was born, and his death was the proof. Another life ended all too soon. With the tag on the toe in the corridor room. Bad times, these are for real. Bad times is what you and I feel. And by Angus where you work, protect the company law. The boss must minimize the staggering cost. You get a day off, a layoff, and a letter to stay off, and now you don't work no more. That position at the plant you really did need. Head of the house, 5 kids to be. You tried everything, but it's just not fair to have an able-bodied man apply for welfare. A city cries out, it's mass hysteria. 1 wounded, 4 dead in a California area. Innocent victims found home slain. Relatives and neighbors experience the pain. They hold back tears, just got to take a stand. Order padlocks and guns in a heavy demand. The fears won't rest until all behind bars for the rest of his life. The boy will carry the scar. Best friend, mother, father, and a very young daughter. Memories in his mind, loved ones have been slaughtered. Is there any way to compensate a person's life so great a fate? Heaven knows this can't go on. Too many things are going wrong. Who was saying for myself? This world is turned to hell. Bad times, these are for real. Bad times is what you and I feel. Help me, all those eyes, they're all out to get me. Wars and murders, when will it cease? I'm being robbed. Someone call the police. Bad times, these are for real. Bad times is what you and I feel. Weather plays havoc on the eastern states. Floods, hurricanes, and you can't escape. Tornadoes drop trees, hurling women and debris, leaving little behind for death and injury. Gonorrhea, syphilis, ran like the plague. Doctors afraid to treat the victim of age. The world is threatened by nuclear war. Americans die in El Salvador. Making me scream, I can't be able to score. They say we can run at 85, 85, 85, 85.
do.
it's just a rat race. Is this the future? We got people working 9 to 5, well over 10% are trying to stay alive. Is this the future? Crime is up, education is down, but the Dow Jones is on the rebound. Is this the future? Ronald Reagan says stay the course, but only a fool would want to endorse this kind of future. Every day as I go my way, I can hear the people as they say,
Hey brother, can you stay up time? I don't wanna end up doing time.
but they say it's just a sign of the future. Just too high. Is this the future? Worked years perfecting my craft. Now my boss has given me the shaft. Is this the future? Used to eat steaks and caviar. Now it's peanut butter and a candy bar. Is this the future?